Hey, welcome back everyone to the Black Brain Trust. This is episode 159. Here with my co-facilitator Lionel.
Hello, hello everyone. How's everyone doing today? How you doing today, Mike?
I'm good, brother. Yourself?
I am well.
Good. Please hit the like button as you come in. Share if possible. There's a docket in the description beneath the video for you to follow along with, and we will get started. All right. So first item on the docket comes from CryptoBriefing.com. Zilliqa launches blockchain education initiative. Cryptocurrency might sound cool, but it's not certainly not easy. Excuse me. Instead of trusting third parties, hodlers have to give their trust to algorithms, math, and code, many of which are difficult for even for experts to grasp. But a new partnership might help bring crypto to the masses through free education and blockchain technology. Zilliqa, a scalable blockchain platform, has joined up with a student-run society at King's College London to launch a series of free hands-on workshops on distributed ledger technology. The program, dubbed Blockchain A to Z, will hold its first session on March 26th. Each workshop will last for 4 weeks under the instruction of Zilliqa's developer marketing lead, uh, Saiba Kataruka. Interesting name. Quote, we're very excited to be engaging with a creative community, said Kataruka. For, this, for those starting from scratch, we hope that blockchain A to Z will equip them with the necessary foundational knowledge to work in one of the most exciting areas of the tech industry today. Although blockchain A to Z will initially be open only to students at King's College London, organizers say they hope to expand to other universities later this year. The workshops will be open to students from various academic disciplines, exploring both the business and technological aspects of DLT, the partners said in the press release. In addition, students will realize the technology's limitation and barriers to adoption. Participation will also be invited to apply for Zilliqa's ecosystem grant program with a pool of $5 million for blockchain development. Interesting. For students, these workshops represent a valuable opportunity to work with one of the leading names in blockchain technology, according to John Ming Young, president of KCL Blockchain. Quote, blockchain education is essential in securing a sustainable future for wider industry, said Zilliqa CEO Shinshu Dong. With Zilliqa's roots in academic research, blockchain A to Z enables us to not only give back to academia, but to also engage with the next generation of talent and equip them with necessary knowledge and resources to bring their ideas to life. Boom, there it is. I know we've been talking about this since last year.
Yeah. This first thought. This is good. This is great. More in depth. I see this as a air quotes community outreach where the community is global, like the world. Whoever wants to come and learn. Yes, blockchain and cryptocurrencies are confusing. Yes, there is a learning curve. And their learning curve is really right now, to tell you the truth, that learning curve is only for people that really want to learn about it, that really want to know about it. And that learning curve is it can repel people because sometimes it'll make people feel dumb. Sometimes it'll make people feel inadequate in their knowledge of things. But once you keep it, all of a sudden it just you learn it. You're like, wow, things come. But I think this is more of an outreach. You see this with Ripple with their university. excuse me. You see this with Ripple with their University Blockchain Research Initiative. They're teaming up with universities. So these cryptos, they have a great team behind them that have a use case that are really doing things. You see them reaching out and teaching people about blockchain because there's a shortage of people in the blockchain development world. You also see this with another cryptocurrency, Horizon, formerly known as Zencash. There's a shortage in blockchain developers, even architects, and you see people teaching other people in order to fill those positions because in order for this asset class to thrive, you'll need those people to come in and fill those positions or to go to these big companies that want to get in the industry, such as the, let's say, I would say JP Morgan, Chase, but not them, but like Fidelities that need blockchain developers in order to have their digital asset arm flourish. So this is good.
Yeah, I think that's always a strategy for most of these any tech companies. You know, they want to push their in order to get push their brand, they have to push the curriculum with it. So um, Microsoft was known for doing this in the 90s, you know, with the MCSE and MCSA. Oracle was good with this with Oracle SQL developer certification. So that's how Oracle got to where they are, and Microsoft as well. What happens with people who take the certifications and take the education courses is that they wear the brand too. So they push the T-shirts, the hats, and all of the merchandise with it, plus the certification. So now when people look on LinkedIn, they see blockchain certified or MCSE or Oracle or something like that. That the brand is being carried by the participants, right? So it doesn't necessarily have to be carried by a company. It can just be carried by the participants. So that's typical in the tech industry. But it's a good thing that they're doing it, at the academic level, right? They're feeding, knowledge to people who never really had it before, and didn't have a full grasp on it before. Whereas in the Microsoft in the tech in the IT industry, Microsoft, Oracle, um, Cisco as well, you had to actually be around that sort of environment to get that knowledge. It wasn't like, oh well, if you were just walking down the street, you could stop at Best Buy and get a Microsoft certification or something like this. It didn't really work that way. You had to actually work for a company that was going to provide that boot camp for you. And what they're doing with blockchain right now is similar, but it's vastly different in that approach. So
Hmm. But that's
yeah,
good. That's excellent that they're doing this stuff.
you're what, a year ahead of that next class. So
Yeah, yeah, and I don't mind learning more. Well, I have to learn more, but I don't mind. Yeah, it's really good. It's really, man, it's really interesting. And when you see, I sent out 2 emails today talking about platforms that want to tokenize or and merge traditional assets on a blockchain. That will need programmers. That will need a lot of people in order to help facilitate that. This is a big industry, big industry.
DBA, you were making 100,000 out the gate back then. 100,000 back then, would be like 150 grand today. So the market ebbs and flows, but this is where it is now. And people who do have a traditional DBA background or a traditional systems engineer background usually pick up on blockchain a lot faster because they have the coding aspect down pat. And there's different variations of blockchain. So you're looking at blockchain certified expert, but then there's blockchain developers, blockchain architects. So
Hmm.
the architect developer is like the pinnacle of where blockchain is in terms of mastery. So
Right.
I don't know where you are in your studies, but that's the the top end.
And there's going to be more and more. There's a number of certifications out now that help you achieve that, the lower rungs of that blockchain tree, uh, because they're needed. And I also sent out another article about IOTA partnering with a country for their Internet of Things infrastructure. And like I said before, plenty of
Taiwan.
times, huh?
Taiwan.
It was Taiwan, and also it was the Danish government too. It was a new yeah, I think it was both Taiwan and Danish government. I think in the article. Thanks for correcting me. I've always said plenty of times, blockchain, and in this case, IOTA, they have a Tangle network, which is similar, but these are enabling technologies that allows other technologies to scale up, to really scale up. So, like, uh, yeah, we beat the horse, yes, and we do beat, because very very much needed. This is, people will be hearing. You may not hear too much about it now today, but
Mhm.
in the future, when you flick on the TV and see that commercial, shilling blockchain, something, you gonna say, wow, they were right.
Yeah, blockchain now is a part of this new gig economy. So the same way people just drive for Lyft and Uber and stuff, well, you're gonna have to forge your own way, with blockchain, um, with the blockchain industry, because companies aren't really companies and governments, I should say, government more importantly, because governments really don't keep up with tech like that, to begin with. So the idea of being a consultant with a government, especially many of these African governments, 55 nations in Africa, they have a lot of catching up to do in digital transformation that needs to be done. And being a blockchain consultant is going to pay dividends in the next 9 months to 12 to 16 months. It's going to pay dividends because a whole lot of identity auditing, supply chain logistics, all types of areas where blockchain can actually be implemented will be implemented, and governments are going to be looking to do business with people who look like them, as well as the expertise and knowledge.
Yes, I agree. I very much agree.
Yep. Could you send Mr. Research the link too? Get a chance.
All right, yeah, I'll hop on it real quick. I'm forwarding it to you right now, Mr. Research. Un momento, por favor.
All right. Next article is from FederalNewsNetwork.com.
All right.
Army plans to follow Navy, Air Force, and outsourcing much of its IT infrastructure. When it comes to its enterprise network, the Army has reached the same conclusion the Navy did almost 2 decades ago. Keeping pace with technology is likely to be a losing battle unless it offloads some proportion of the work to private industry. So over the next 2 years, the Army plans to start moving itself toward a model it calls enterprise IT as a service, in much of the same way the Navy consolidated its IT infrastructure into Navy Marines Corps intranet in 2001. As of now, the Army estimates that 70% of the servers, routers, and end user devices on its 288 worldwide facilities are at or near the end of life. The figure is even higher for the equipment that handles voice communications, about 90%. Lieutenant General Bruce Crawford, the Army's chief information officer, said under the service's current modernization methodologies, replacing all of the gear would take until at least 2030. And in the meantime, it would be stuck with the bills involved with maintaining an enormous amount of legacy infrastructure. It's almost like a Gordian knot, where we're trying to untie when we look at the effort to modernize the enterprise. He told an audience at the Association of the U.S. Army's headquarters in Arlington, Virginia this week. The Army's enterprise network, at its current level of investment, cannot meet the immediate and future warfighting requirements to optimize force readiness. Interesting. In a request for information, the Army issued to industry to January, it asked for feedback on two possible structures: one in which Army's infrastructure is owned by the government but operated by contractors, and one in which contractors both own and operate the infrastructure. Crawford said the Army is planning three pilot projects to test out the enterprise IT as a service model this year, with 6 to 8 more likely to follow in 2020. The first pilot will be at the new Army's at the new Army Futures Command in Austin, Texas. The details of the project are still being worked out, but he said the overall objective is less about saving money than about delivering more effective IT services. Quote, there are really three principles to our enterprise as a service model, and I expect our industry partners to hold us to this, he said. Principle number one involves enabling the Army to deliver IT at a commercial standard or better, to increase the pace of modernization and our ability to do what we do best for the nation, which is to project power forward around the world. The second principle is putting ourselves in a position where we can continuously leverage industry best practices with doing that at a scale. And third, optimizing to better defend the Army network's mission systems and data. The Army's decision to start to outsource at least some aspects of the management of its IT infrastructure makes it a latecomer of sorts among the military services. The enterprise IT as a service model moniker is chosen for the overhaul is identical to the name for the Air Force is using for a similar project launched last year. Just last week, the Air Force announced $76 million other transaction agreement with Unisys to continue to experiment with new service delivery approach at 8 of its bases. But the Navy adopted a contractor operated approach nearly 20 years ago in order to start to untie the same type of Gordian knot Crawford is facing now. The Navy came to regret some aspects of the contractor owned and operated approach it started with, and it took until 2013 before it moved to a government owned but contractor operated structure that gave it more control over its IT assets and insight into the cost of individual network services. In a separate but related effort, the Army is taking new steps to speed up its adoption of cloud computing, even as the fate of the Defense Department's Jedi Cloud contract remains uncertain. Crawford said the Army remains fully supportive of the Jedi effort, but within the next 3 months, it will stand up a new cloud program office. After that, the Army is likely to create at least two contracts to help migrate existing systems to the cloud. In 2019, the Army plans to focus its transitions in five specific areas: intelligence data, financial management, applications, global force integration, logistics, and maintenance, and data at the tactical edge. We spent some time thinking about this particular problem set, and I think we've gleaned a lot of insight in our market research from the likes of Netflix, Airbnb, and the banking industry and other government organizations over the past 6 months, Harford said. The most insightful recommendations have been that you need to start small and focus on your cloud efforts on targeted specific problems while you learn and build the capacity as an institution to migrate to the cloud at scale. I agree with that 100%. Um, I know you have anything you want to add to this?
Yeah, I'm surprised that excuse me. I'm surprised that they're doing this. When usually my thought process was, having been trained in the army, well, the military in certain jobs such as IT and things that can be these jobs that can be transferred to the civilian sector, you are going to be chosen above and first prior to other civilians because people know the military trained you. You were trained. This was your job 24/7 at the very least for 12 hours a day. This is what you did. So I'm surprised that we're doing this, that they are choosing this, but at the same on the other side of that token, the article is right. They can scale up a lot faster and a lot more if they outsource it. Now, outsourcing it to American citizens, because if you outsource it outside the country, that becomes a security risk. But outsourcing to American citizens, and which means contracts. I got some hair in my mouth, but that means contracts, civilian contracts, civilian contract with the government, which means jobs, which means these are things black men can get into.
Yeah. So they would never outsource it to anybody outside the country, only because these systems have to be maintained on site, on U.S. territory. So, but the aspect of contracting does bring a lot of positive bells from a lucrative standpoint. I'm surprised that the Army took so long to do this. I thought that they had a whole program in place back in 2007, 2008 for future combat systems, FCS, I think that's the name of it. So, but there's going to be a whole lot that comes out of this because, like the article mentioned at the end, and I agree with it, that you have to start small. You have to move small things off first. So, those servers that are EOL, which is end of life, those servers have to be the first ones to come off, and you have to figure out a way to spin those, um, those servers um, into a cloud stack and have that migration take place. I don't know how many servers that the Army is probably sitting on that is probably antiquated and probably risky to even operate at this point. But I'm pretty sure there's quite a bit, and this probably requires a massive effort to to have that sort of migration put in place. But then this allows the Army to start working on blockchain solutions and things like that for all your new future combat readiness, tanks, your helicopters, your drones, and automated vehicles, autonomous vehicles, fighting systems,
Uh,
fire control systems, weapons manufacturers, things of that nature, all types of logistics.
and this sounds, as you were talking, I thought about something. This sounds a lot like NASA. Before NASA started contracting with the Russians to send their astronauts out in space prior to 2011, it actually cost NASA more than what they paid the Russians to send payloads and astronauts up out into space to the ISS. Having having to pay $81 million per seat to the Russians was cheaper than what they were doing. So
Mhm.
even though they outsourced it to another country, now they're bringing it back with a successful launch of Tesla's mission a couple, say 2 weeks ago. Now they're bringing it back, and that'll still be cheaper, which means those are government contracts. So on a certain level, the Army is doing the same thing. Yes, it takes a lot of money to do what they're doing in the IT industry right now, but if they outsource it, they may come out cheaper because with the Army and not specifically with the Army, but with the military, they're gonna go with the cheapest. Um, what's the word I'm looking for here?
Mm.
Um, quote. But they're going to make sure that you know your stuff, but they're going to go with the cheapest quote.
Look, the problem is that the government needs their own cloud instead of relying on AWS and all these other third-party vendors. They need to just build their own cloud and let contractors manage the cloud for them. Because see, if the data and the infrastructure belongs to the federal government, then they won't have to, rely on AWS and whether or not their data is safe or whether or not it could be intercepted or compromised. They won't have to worry about that. See, if they own the infrastructure, then it makes more sense in that regard because they can build from scratch and they can build high performance systems that way rather than to rely on a cost model that's going to be efficient for them. Um, because this is something that's going to be long term, right? The article said that this probably wouldn't fully um, be realized until 2030. That's 10 years from now. That's a long time for in the IT industry. 3 years is a long time. So if you're talking 10 years from now, then that's quite a bit.
Yeah, yeah, they need to up those years because countries like China and Russia, these are already superpowers that are already here that are testing your, lack of a better word, supremacy, uh, power on Earth. They're not waiting 10 years to input blockchain or input a cat cloud server. I'm sorry, you have to be on the at least on the same timeline as them, if not faster. They're not waiting to in 10 years. In 10 years, it'll be 2030, which means the things we're talking about now that's going to be revolutionary in the future, those that in this industrial fourth industrial revolution, that will be here. So plant will here built the foundation and by 2030, by the year 2030, it'll be common knowledge. And that's at the time you're thinking about installing yours. That timeline needs to be faster. It needs to be, you know, on a double. It needs to be yesterday. So, and I do agree with you. They do need to own their own infrastructure and their own cloud because it's security. You need that. You're gonna need that. But they should hire technicians, um, civilian technicians to maintain it. But I do agree with you. They need to have their own separate from quote unquote everyday government.
Mhm. All right, this next one is from tomshardware.com. Why every tech geek should own a Raspberry Pi. As editor in chief of Tom's Hardware, I get to play with some of the most expensive gear around, but my favorite computer costs as little as $5. I'm talking about Raspberry Pi, the single board system that sold more units than any personal computing platform except for PCs and Macs. If you don't already own one of the 25 million Raspberry Pis that have been sold since 2012, now would be a good time to dump the change out of your piggy bank and use it to buy one. With just a Broadcom BCM 2837 Cortex A53 CPU and 1 GB of RAM on the high end, Raspberry Pi 3B Plus, this computer isn't meant to replace your primary PC, but it can do a slew of things that your x86 computer can't or shouldn't. To help to help you move forward on your Pi journey, we just launched the first ever Tom's Hardware Raspberry Pi channel, which will house a variety of tutorials and sample projects, along with the latest Raspberry Pi news. If you're just getting started, check out the article on how to set up Raspberry Pi. With a Pi, you can create devices that include everything from a robotic arm to a Wi Fi security camera to a standard web server. You can even build your own retro gaming system, complete with old fashioned arcade joystick and buttons. The Raspberry Pi secret sauce comes from a few main things: the GPIO, general input output pins. Modern Raspberry Pi models each have 40 pins that you can use to connect them to all kinds of external devices, from sensors to monitor to motors to LED lights. You could even you can even attach different hats with that provide added functionality by popping them onto the GPIO pins. For example, the Sense hat adds a gyroscope accelerometer, magnetometer, thermometer, and pressure sensor. You don't get pins like this on the x86 PC. huge, huge ecosystem with plenty of support. There are thousands of accessories and tools that make it easy to create your own devices with Raspberry Pi. And there are a ton of great online resources to help you. In addition to our brand new Raspberry Pi channel, you can check out the official Raspberry Pi forums, the Raspberry Pi subreddit, and Raspberry Pi Do It Yourself subreddit. Low price, the price of a Pi makes it affordable to use in lots of different home projects. Want to make it want to make your own arcade machine this week, a fart detector next week, and a local web server the week after. The cost the cost makes it easy to keep buying new ones. If you're the kind of person who enjoys the challenge and the sense of satisfaction you get from building your own PC, working from Raspberry Pi is like that, but on steroids. And unlike your PC, which you probably only upgrade once every few years, you can build new things with Raspberry Pi every week. If you're a parent, playing with Raspberry Pi is a great way to connect with your kids while teaching them valuable STEM skills. My 6-year-old and I regularly work on Pi projects together. Here are some things that have made or are in the process of making. Retro Pi video game console that plays old arcade games. Universal toy controller that operates his Lego motors via Bluetooth low energy. A virtual window to Scotland that shows live webcam streams on the countryside. A simple traffic light that changes from green to yellow to red. This is interesting. What do you think about this, Lino?
I like it. I was just looking at a video a couple of days ago, excuse me, which stated the Bitcoin Lightning Network, how people can set up their own nodes. And it was a company that started selling devices that solely work as a Bitcoin Lightning node. And this guy, he was reviewing it. Actually, he's the creator of Dogecoin. But beside that, to get back on track, he was saying that this device worked on a Raspberry Pi. They were selling Bitcoin Lightning nodes, and the main guts of it was operating on a Raspberry Pi. And I've seen people do creative things. I'm sure you have too with Raspberry Pis. In the past, we talked about Raspberry Orange. I think it was Raspberry Purple or something. But I know definitely talked about Raspberry Orange. But these Raspberry Pis are inexpensive, and you can do so much to know that you can have your favorite childhood games on there. Super Mario, Mario, Mario Kart, Zelda, all all of them. Now, on a Raspberry Pi, plus more, plus do other things on a server. Wow, these things are inexpensive, and it will. I agree with the article. It can also stimulate wanting to learn in children, wanting to build things in children. Remember those? Remember those erector sets? Yep, you could do this with a
Yeah.
Raspberry Pi.
Yeah, you could actually build a blockchain network, so you could turn it into a node if you develop it in JavaScript.
That's outstanding. That's outstanding.
Mhm. And you can build your own cube-based satellite. We actually have a hangout coming out next month, just talking about cube-based satellites and Raspberry Pi. So there's going to be some interesting stuff coming out of this.
Outstanding.
Yeah, the survey is yeah. LaShawn Jefferson says in the chat that build a server with them. Seen some nice setup. The problem is with a server is that you have to run it really lean because it only has a gigabyte of RAM, and most applications would actually need require a certain amount of RAM. So depending on what you're doing with the server, if you're just trying to run a web server on a very lean scale, you could probably get away with it. But anything more than that, not going to do much. You're not going to be able to do much because the operating system itself for Linux will probably use up at least 128 to maybe 256 megabytes of memory out of that 1 gig. So now you're left with 768 gigs, if not 512, right? So now you're left with a half a gig of memory, plus boot space. So there's certain things you can do, but it has to be application specific, and you have to make sure that you're getting it down correctly. What's going on, Ronan Black? You have to make sure you're getting it down correctly because um, if you exceed the memory, or if you don't secure it correctly, then what happens is they can launch a cyber attack against that. If you did have it on the public facing network, they can launch a cyber attack and basically fill up the memory, a memory buffer attack, and then you're really out of commission. So, but yeah, Raspberry Pi, everybody should own one. Um, you should own just as many as you own Jordans. So,
Have you tried to do anything with a Raspberry Pi?
not as recent. Old ones, yeah, but I'm not a big Linux person, so I work mostly with Windows, and
Mm,
it's hard to run any sort of Windows operating system on it. Although there have been um, some Windows NT and things like that that has been replicated, but nothing to that extent.
okay, all right,
But something I have on my list though. All
awesome.
right, this one is from interestingengineering.com. Artificial intelligence creates a new generation of machine learning. CEO and founder of R2AI, Wayne Huang, talks to Interesting Engineering in an exclusive interview about how he started a company where AI creates machine learning models and how AI is not going to replace and enhance humans' jobs in the future. Headquartered in Silicon Valley with offices in Shanghai and Hangzhou in China, R2.AI Incorporated is growing rapidly. We sat down with the company's founder and CEO to talk about AI and that creates AI and how automation is going to affect jobs in the future. Originally a chemist, this goes out to you, Mr. Nate. Originally a chemist, Nguyen Huang, PhD, ended up working in artificial intelligence and machine learning 23 years ago when doing research using AI to identify molecular structures in chemicals. Quote, I found the world of machine learning and computing so fascinating that I decided to switch into computer science. Since then, I've worked for 20 years in the space with data and data management, machine learning, and enterprise software development, he tells Interesting Engineering. The reason why I started R2.AI is that when I was at Teradata, we actually developed the world's first machine learning platform based on distributed parallel computing architecture, which can train a machine learning model of terabytes of data in just minutes, unlike the traditional ways of doing it that takes weeks. It's really fast in terms of how quickly the machine learning model can be trained. Despite the feedback from almost all of the R2 AI's uh, customers saying how fast and fascinating the technology was, they couldn't find enough machine learning experts to operate the tool. This shows significant lack of machine learning talent, even though there is so much need for it. According to a Gartner survey of over 3,000 CIOs, artificial intelligence was by far the most mentioned technology and takes the spot of the top game changer technology away from data and analytics, which is now occupying a second place. Quote, what we what we see here is a milestone in the transition to the third era of IT, the digital era, said Andy Roswell Jones, Vice President and Distinguished Analyst at Gartner. Indeed, responding to this and the feedback given by R2's customers, Huang figured he now had a new mission to work on new machine learning development in an operation platform that not only should be fast, but also it should be easy to use. So easy to use, in fact, that not even non-machine learning experts could quickly learn how to use it. Quote, so I had this idea of why can't we use AI technology to develop new generation of machine learning development and operation platform that can compute models automatically without giving problems in the data set. That's how we started R2, and that's how we developed R2 Learn, which is a tool now with the software as a service availability for it. That's how we ended up doing automatic machine learning. Before the SaaS application, R2 Learn was only available on premises. Narrow AI, general AI, cognitive AI, reinforcement learning, and automation technology. Interesting word. Huang explains that the current stage of R2 Learn is within the narrow AI technology parameters. I guess the general AI at the end comes from a combination of all other different narrow AI technologies, he says. So when in narrow AI technologies we combine in a very meaningful way that you have something something with a very good chance to become a general AI. I think it's a gradual process, step by step. There is so much new terminology around artificial intelligence that one needs to be careful and learn about the different aspects each of them encapsulate. Quote, the AI space is very broad, says Huang. You have machine learning, which is the most popular trend at this point, but there is also cognitive AI that tries to understand and mimic the human behavior and tries to be able to translate the human knowledge into artificial intelligence. That's the cognitive AI. There's also technology like reinforcement learning, which is part of the machine learning, but is but there is the idea that it is able to simulate. The simulation in a way allows you to mimic the human like creativity. And then there is also automation technology that you can put everything together in a very efficient way. He explains. This is just a model of the R2 Learn and an end-to-end automated machine learning. It's very interesting. What do you think about this, Lino? I mean, I thought blockchain was like the new hot ticket out there. I guess artificial intelligence is that deal.
um, I'm not mad at it. Nobody said, "Hey, it's only blockchain, nothing else," because what's going to happen is these technologies are going to talk to each other. They're going to do business with each other. If you understand what I'm saying, they're going to do projects with each other. They're going to be built on top of each other. So with AI, I always thought AI and machine learning went hand in hand also, but you also can do AI and blockchain, AI and IoT. You know, AI is going to be in autonomous driving. So these technologies are going to speak with each other. Now, per this article, they did a good job writing this article. I would say that. As
Hmm.
when I say about 10 years ago, at least, when when people spoke about going into space, it was expensive. Now, more and more people doing it, it's accessible. With AI and machine learning, more and more people write code and packages and things like that. It'll be easier for other people to get into it and just blow your mind on what they can do.
Hmm.
That's my opinion of it.
Yeah, when you start talking about emerging technologies, we mentioned blockchain. They're saying AI is like the high thing in demand. Machine learning, all of these digital transformation models actually encompass greater um, a greater discussion about the fourth industrial revolution. And this is these things come into play. These items come into play. These technology models come into play that are going to make up a larger portion of what's needed in the next year and a half to maybe 5 or 6 years. Because when you talk about artificial intelligence, you're talking about traffic lights, and I'm thinking about from a civilian infrastructure standpoint or urbanization standpoint, traffic lights, um, um, street lamps, right? So your street lamps, how fast are they going on and off, and how much energy are they going to use, and blockchain, and auditing and bill payments, and things of that nature, securing information that's in transit. The machine learning aspect that says because you got on this bus on Michigan Ave and you got off at this spot every day, then chances are we need to put our advertising in this area, and we also need to put policing in this area, and so on and so forth. A whole lot of um, aspects that comes out of this whole digital transformation and emerging technologies is going to allow for a whole litany of things from a job perspective, from an opportunities perspective, um, that can easily be learned on things like Udacity. We talked about that on Saturday, as well as EDX. As a matter of fact, let me drop the link in the chat, because no sense in mentioning it if you're not going to actually.
Yeah. And these classes that we link to, they only say, hey, cut out 2 hours a day, hour and a half to 2 hours a day, do that consistently, and next thing you know, you got something to put on your resume, or you got something to not only on your resume, but you got something to work with as a skill. You have something. Just wake up in the morning, put aside an hour and a half, the first hour and a half, 2 hours of your day, and knock it on, get out the way. Because that's how I do it. And by the end of the day, man, I'm glad I did that. Because if I say, well, I'll put it off, I wouldn't do it. But it's just that easy. Is I know it makes to some people it may sound like I don't know about that, but it is just that easy.
Mhm. Yeah, and what we're looking at right here is Udacity's site with artificial intelligence, as the article mentioned. Well, if we click on it and learn more, you'll see a various amount of programs: computer vision, deep reinforcement learning, like the article mentioned, machine learning engineer, AI programming with Python, deep learning again, natural language processing, and artificial intelligence. Um, yes, 22 days to enroll. 1 day to enroll. Actually, let me click on it. And this is a nano degree program. This is, you know, basically a baby degree. You're not. It's not like, oh, you went to University of Phoenix and got a degree and it doesn't mean anything. No, this is actually credible now. A nano degree. This was unheard of maybe 5 or 6 years ago, even 10 years ago for that matter. That was unheard of. People were going to community college. They didn't know what they really wanted to do with themselves, so they take these general classes, waste their time for 2 years, and then they come back looking for another thing to get themselves into. This is 3 months, 6 months, nano degree. Put that on your resume. Put that on your LinkedIn. Looks nice and beefy. Your artificial intelligence, background, or machine learning background, blockchain background, autonomous vehicle background, um, big data science. Data science is another one, because you have a whole lot of data being generated by cell phones and smart watches and autonomous vehicles and all types of civilian and urban infrastructure in place. Bus stops and advertisements on streets and mailboxes and all types of things that's going to come out of this. So
Now it showed the
that's,
salary range on there also.
where's that?
I think you scroll down. Oh, there you
Oh,
go.
right here. Top
Yeah.
top AI specialists are making 300 to 500,000 salaries. Yeah, this is true. There's a special company here in Boston. I won't mention the name of it. I sat down with them, and they had probably about a dozen PhD um, graduates that were working on artificial intelligence, um, and they were getting paid 150 each.
Wow.
They were recent graduates. Put that in the chat.
Man, you can't beat that. You cannot beat that.
So it's a whole lot of Joe steak and cheese for you, Joe.
Man, you cannot beat that. Ooh, I tell you, and it don't take much. Just a steady learning process. That's it. Every
Yeah,
day.
if you can sit on a hangout for 8 hours a day, then this is what you can do in your spare time.
Whew.
Better utilization. All right, this next one is from SeekingAlpha.com. Amazon, artificial intelligence in the top in the $10 trillion healthcare opportunity. We just got finished talking about our AI. Back in 2017, I wrote an article highlighting Amazon's underappreciated investments in artificial intelligence and why is a significant source of competitive advantage. Since then, AI has become more important than ever for the company and shareholders, though the company continues to remain relatively quiet about it. Amazon's push into the healthcare industry is well documented. However, few are aware of the central role of AI technology in Amazon's push. Understanding this is more than mere academic exercise. It is crucial to understanding the sustainable competitive advantage Amazon could enjoy in this massive market, one which Deloitte uh, predicated will grow to over $10 trillion worldwide by 2022. We just got finished talking about the salaries. The more desperate they become, the more they're going to pay. Why artificial intelligence equals sustainable competitive advantage? Centralization versus decentralization. So we're looking at a model of what a typical centralized uh, AI structure would look like, or system integration structure would look like. The decentralized structure on the right hand side actually is the emergent portion of um, artificial intelligence. It is beyond the scope of this article to go through the history and promise of AI. However, it is important to note that AI now is now such a hot topic due to revolutionary breakthroughs in artificial neural networks or deep learning in the 2010s. These breakthroughs enable algorithms to learn and thus introduce a new level of machine intelligence never available before, enabling algorithms to accomplish breathtaking new feats, such as defeating the world's top Go players and disrupting the translation industry. First, there is a massive shortage of AI experts. We just mentioned that. So only well-funded companies or those with massive cash flows are capable of building world-class AI teams. In 2017, Tencent estimated that there are only 300,000 AI researchers worldwide, far short of the millions demanded by the market. These scarce human resources are in high demand everywhere, and consequently, tech giants are emptying university AI departments with massive compensation packages. Second, AI delivers the greatest value to companies with the greatest data assets, which correlates with the scale of the enterprise. It takes a massive amount of data to train neural networks. And naturally, the best AI talents prefer to work in data-rich environments. It is no surprise that the it is no surprise then that the companies that are most excited about AI are also the ones with the greatest data assets. BGS Idmore in the chat has arrived. What's going on, brother? If you want a link, you can actually get on. But line up, if you can send him a link, that would be great. BGS asks, what will it mean for jobs if it penetrates it? So jobs that can be automated will be automated. But what happens here is the jobs that can be automated actually opens up a different sort of venue for job placement again. So now you're still going to need people to manage different areas of artificial intelligence. Um, a lot of machines that do capture data will still need to be maintained. So those jobs that got replaced will naturally be transitioned to something else. So like in a hospital generates massive amounts of data because it has so many patients and it has so many devices that are online connected. So therefore, it has a lot of machine learning that gets put into place, and then that's where the artificial intelligence comes in. So one of the hospitals that I do go to for treatment, um, they've replaced their human staff with on the front at the front desk um, with these
Kiosks.
kiosks that you walk into, and you basically put your fingerprint on it, and it actually logs you in and calls your doctor, and your doctor comes out in the on the floor and picks you up.
Yeah, that's what they do at the VA. We put our we it's a touch screen. We put our information in, and we just let the people know that we're here for our appointment, and we just have a seat, and they call us back.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, those people at the front desk, customer relations and customer service and things like that. Yeah, that's nice and all, but those five people that were at that desk, those five women that are at that desk, could be reduced down to one because you have two, three, four kiosks set up that every patient can log into just by walking up to it, and it knows automatically who you are based on the amount of time that you were supposed to be there. If your appointment was at 4:15, you showed up at 4:10, and you walk up to the kiosk and you put your fingerprint on it, it logs you right in, calls your doctor and says, "Yeah, have a seat."
Right. And somebody can be having a bad day, and next thing you know, you feeling the whole brunt of that bad day.
Yeah, BGS has also health insurance as well. Yeah, the health insurance piece is added into it. So what happens with health insurance companies is that they generate a lot of data themselves, and the hospital generates a lot of data. So hospitals' data also patient data also gets fed into the healthcare insurance that's appropriate to the patient himself or patient him or herself. Once that data gets appropriated to it, um, to the insurance company generates their own artificial intelligence for that matter in the cloud. You know, your hospital, your healthcare providers in the cloud, your healthcare insurance providers in the cloud. Therefore, there's a new mechanism that needs to be put in place, and that's where blockchain comes in. Once those health records get passed over to the health insurance company, that AI is going to spin up um, all the data that is being collected, and it's going to say based on the historical reference of other patients, this type of treatment will be best suited for X pharmaceutical prescription, and that pharmaceutical company, whether it's Bayer or some of these other major Glaxo, those other companies, that they have their own AI system based on the patient data that's been fed to them from the insurance companies, and they're going to use their AI to get the best treatment or the best prescription possible. And then a company like CVS or Walgreens has their own machine learning process that's going to say, um, based on this patient at this location, at this geolocation, we can generate um, this prescription and have it ready by the time the patient even leaves the hospital. That's how fast all of this is going to work. Let me finish this up real quick. Second, AI delivers the greatest value to companies with the greatest data assets, with, which correlates with the scale of the enterprise. It takes a massive amount of data to train neural networks, and naturally, the best AI talents prefer to work. Oh, I think I've read that already. Yeah. So again, this is where you need to be. We've been talking about this since last year, but this is where you need to be. AI, blockchain, data science, machine learning, autonomous vehicles. It also I think we covered an article a few weeks ago, Lino, where in Kenya they have ambulance as a service.
Yeah, yeah. I think that was maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. Yeah, yeah. That was an
Yeah,
idea. That was an idea.
yeah. You're basically having um, your ambulance like Lyft that comes and picks you up based on your GPS location and takes you to the hospital. That's also AI or machine learning generated. There's a whole lot of things BGS that's going to come out of this big, big opportunity that's going to come out of this that could be actually um, acquired through little means of education, such as Udacity and such as EDX. So,
Yeah, yeah. Um, Nothing else to add on this one. Nothing else to add on to it.
mhm. All right, this one is from CNN.com. Why space is becoming a dangerous place to do business. Internet startup OneWeb. Fucking kidding me. Internet startup OneWeb has plans to deploy hundreds of new satellites into Earth's orbit, and CEO Greg Weiler wants to make sure it's done safely. Space is already littered with hazards. There are millions of pieces of debris whirling around, the result of 50 years of space travel and a few regulations to keep space clean. One collision already happened. OneWeb doesn't want to add to the junk problem while Weiler told CNN Business. So it's committed to removing its satellites after they finish their job. He said he thinks of the debris issue much of the thinks of environmental issues. There are so many ideas of satellites out there that are done without full consideration to the full cycle of the system. What happens to the plastic bottle when you throw it into the ocean? He said it's the same problem, just at a different scale. The number of satellites in our skies is expected to more than triple over the next decade as more than 77,000 new devices are added, according to the one estimate. Experts fear that as space becomes increasingly crowded, collisions could set off disastrous chains, disastrous chain relations or reactions. That could mean an end to scientific exploration, GPS service, satellite TV, internet, and phone service for millions of people. I know I think we read this article before, but I want to say that this is what we were talking about. The space version of Sanford and Son. You go pick it up junk and throw it in the back of your pickup truck.
Yeah, and when people launch things into low Earth orbit, they're supposed to, once the life cycle out of that satellite is done, they're supposed to give it orders to jettison it to a deeper area of space that surrounds the Earth. That way, it's out of the way. It's basically out of the way when people go to and fro from Earth. But that doesn't happen all the time. And what happens, like the article mentioned, things bump into each other, break off. Either they stay in space or you have millions and millions of little particles. And as the space, not race, but as people are able to get into or launch things in orbit at a cheaper price, more and more people are going to do it with these cube satellites and everything. That when they don't go to this area that they're supposed to per government standards, so things bump into each other. These fragments uh, go into Earth's atmosphere, either burn up if they're too big, they'll burn up partially. And there's an area in the world, area in the ocean, where it has the most. This is crazy. It has the most satellite pieces in it. It's like a secluded area of the ocean between. Australia, and the western part of South America. And it's a lot of debris in there over there. But the more and more junk you have will make it dangerous for these space missions to these billion-dollar space missions to go into space. It'll make it dangerous for the International Space Station. So when we talk about space, it's not, oh, we're going into space to look for something. It's not just that. There's money that goes into it. You like Mike just said, you go into space, and we laugh and joke of San Francisco Sun space garbage collecting, but that's an actual thing. You can make a nice living from that. So when as humans go into space, low Earth orbit, and in the immediate vicinity of Earth, there's a lot of money to be made, making it safe for these private businesses and governments to go and to and fro from Earth safely without damaging vital engines or vital parts because of a small space debris that's traveling 500 miles a kilometer.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I wonder, I wonder what the future's going to look like in the next 20 years. With all of this. I mean, what does a space SUV even look like, right? Is it some kind of drone with like two arms that picks up certain pieces of debris and puts it in the back of its hull, and then takes off and comes back to Earth? I mean, what does it do with it? I mean, where do you dump it? I mean, is there going to be like a recycling facility on the moon or inside of a space station that has to be created in order to be in either it's privately managed or it's governed by the United Nations, right? Or space version of the United Nations, some kind of space treaty where everybody contributes to um, one space station to manufacture. I mean, not manufacture, but recycle all of this space junk. It's a whole lot of things that can come out of this. I don't think they've really fully thought this out yet. I mean, why send people up to space or even a spaceship up to space to go pick up some junk and bring it right back down to Earth? That seems like a waste of time. I'd be
It's
interested in
fuel.
knowing that if you could recycle it in space, you could probably manufacture new pieces or new 3D printed parts, and then you could start building. Not a base on the moon, but maybe some furniture on the moon, some space furniture.
And excuse me, a lot of this stuff, well, almost all of it, the things that are surrounding Earth are past missions, and the sun is always shining in space. You can focus a lot of that energy to just melt parts that can be recycled. And terms of your furniture on the moon, it's actually that it can be done. It's called the regolith, which is the moon dust, the unstructured moon dust. They Well, people they're experimenting with it now. They can put it inside a machine at like a 3D printer machine and make bricks. This is this is actual stuff that people
Legos.
are focusing on.
Yeah, Legos.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah. All right, next one is from USA Today.com. Nuclear rockets could open up solar system and help settle space, and NASA is interested. A 4-month journey to Mars. NASA is spending more on nuclear rockets again, and it's about time. They are the future of space travel and exploration. It's the 21st century. Shouldn't we all have nuclear rockets by now? Actually, we had them a long time ago in the 1960s. The United States experimented with two types of nuclear rockets. One is now in the budget again, and I think the other should be. The first type of nuclear rocket uses a nuclear reactor to heat a reaction mass, hydrogen or even water, and expels it from the thrust chamber as fast moving gas. Chemical rockets, like we use today, depend on a chemical reaction, basically a controlled chemical explosion to produce the hot gas. Back during the 1960s, we experimented with nuclear rockets of this type. known as nu- nuclear thermal rockets under projects Rover and Nerver. Generally, the problem with rocket engines is that you can either make them highly efficient but with very low thrust, like ion drives, or give them powerful thrust with low efficiency, like a chemical rocket. The only way to have both at once, high efficiency and high thrust, is to go nuclear. Nuclear thermal rockets are about twice as efficient as the best chemical rockets. With a nuclear rocket like the ones researched in Project Nerva, a trip to Mars could be done in 4 months. Interestingly, the astronauts would actually be exposed to less radiation with a nuclear ship because shortening the trip reduces their exposure to cosmic rays in space. And with higher thrust and higher efficiency, nuclear rockets would open up much of the solar system. They they could even be designed to rendezvous with comets and use cometary ice as fuel for the return trip. That's fucking amazing. Now NASA is getting interested in nuclear rockets again. In 2017, it awarded a nearly $19 million contract for development, and this year's NASA budget contains $100 million for nuclear thermal research, leading to a demonstration in 2024. As Mark Whittington writes in The Hill, the nuclear propulsion technology will mean the difference between a deep space exploration program consisting of sorties that land on Mars and visit other destinations, do a lot of good science, then return, and one that expands human civilization throughout the solar system. But I mentioned that there are two kinds of nuclear rockets. Nuclear thermal propulsion is great, but if you want real performance, you have to go with another kind of nuclear propulsion, Orion. Not the boring space capsule of the same name being developed today, but the project of the 1960s that involved eminent, eminent physicist Freeman Dyson and famed nuclear weapons designer Ted Taylor. Orion was a spaceship powered by small nuclear explosions. Specialized bomblets would go off below a big pusher plate, shoving the spacecraft hard in the other direction. Orion worked better when it was big and could, in theory, have attained a fraction of the speed of light, and certainly would have been fast enough to go anywhere in the solar system in a reasonable amount of time. All of this is recounted in George Dyson's fascinating book, Project Orion: The True Story of the Atomic Spaceship. Will Bezos get his wish to visit other outer planets? The Orion never flew. Oh, the Orion never flew, but maybe it's time. Some might argue the nuclear explosives would violate the outer space treaties, provision forbidding nuclear weapons or any kind of weapons of mass destruction in orbit. But nuclear explosives aren't necessarily nuclear weapons. Ask the difference between the Atlas rockets that launched astronauts into space and Atlas missiles aimed at Moscow. President John F. Kennedy reportedly gave a one-word answer: attitude. The Limited Test Ban Treaty prohibits nuclear explosions in outer space, but among space major powers, only the United States and Russia are parties. France and China, for example, are not. And there's an argument that this treaty doesn't effectively ban nuclear explosions used for space propulsion. What do you think about this, Lionel? Because this is really, really interesting. I
It
never
is.
thought about the
Go ahead.
amount of energy that comes from I never thought about the amount of energy that comes from a nuclear explosion or an atomic explosion to propel a vehicle outward. But how many times do you need to detonate an explosion like that before you get to your next destination? Because it's only gonna propel you for so far, right?
Mm-hmm. And that's an interesting question. And I wonder if they can, because in space, an object is in motion, remains in motion. There's nothing really that'll slow it down other than uh, a object that it crash into. And in the case of the series that expands, what they do is they have this engine called the Epstein engine. What they do is once they're in motion, they calculate when they'll get to arrival, and then the spaceship turn around. So they use propulsion to slow them down when the spaceship do a 180. Now this is interesting because in numerous past space and technology shows, we've mentioned how space can have a bad effect on the human body, the brain, the bones, the body, everything. The longer you are out in space, and the astronauts that are on the International Space Station, they succumb to these radiation effects also. Now, the shortest time to get to Mars at its shortest point between Earth and Mars, at the shortest point is 6 months. The shorter of distance you can get that, the more advantageous it'll be to go to Mars. You can start sending people to Mars, sending more and more rovers first, sending more and more at depending on point in time, sending more and more machines, um, robots there, and then people. You can send more things there to get it started, and then Mars will be a jump off point to get to the asteroid belt to mine these minerals to bring it back to Earth to mine these $7 quintillion asteroid rocks. Then from the asteroid belt, you have an asteroid which we went over before of building a some type of structure inside an asteroid because it may be able to hold it. Then have that as a jump off point to go to these jovial planet moons like Io, Ganymede, Titan. Um, then go to the outer jovial planets, the outer ice giants. So this all can start with a faster way to travel because you can't just send people out in space for months and months and traveling through space for months at a time. Because by the time they get to their destination, their brain gonna be fried. They won't be no good. That's a suicide mission. So the faster you can get to these places, the industry will just explode. Just because now we got other planets to go to. We got other planets and asteroids to mine. The industry will just explode once you find a way to get to these places in a shorter amount of time.
Right. So it sounds like you can use an asteroid as a spaceship itself, right? Instead of using because some of these asteroids I think that we've read over the past hangouts one of them is about the size of Manhattan.
Hmm.
That's pretty. That's pretty significant for an asteroid, right? So now you're talking about building a city, or not even a city, but a you're turning the asteroid
Station, some type of
into a
station.
portable, yeah, a portable space station, and you could probably propel it with atomic energy, right?
Hmm. Just like that cigar-sized asteroid that made a left at the sun. Oumuamua, everybody was talking about. These things are it only these things are so close where it only takes one breakthrough technology and the floodgates just open. It only takes one thing, and next thing you know, by the time you're in your 50s, they say, well, the colony on Mars, they discovered an underground reservoir. It's like, what? It's like, wow, I remember back in the day, we didn't have cell phones. Now, people on Mars, it just takes one thing.
The only problem is how do you communicate?
Yeah,
Because you
because
won't have you won't have obviously cell phones, but you would have some form of sat phone, and you would
mm,
have to use some form of laser based technology to push your push your signal.
right, right, and that'll take a couple of minutes to get through, and I think it's 2 weeks out of the year
Hmm.
there's no communication between Earth and Mars because Earth is on the other side of the sun, and then try to get at this point in time to try to get those signals around is null and void, is nil. So there's no communication because the size of the sun is absolutely enormous. So you really can't really. It's technology, man. We'll get there. It's just gonna take time, but we'll get there. Most
Well,
definitely.
that's where right, and that's where black people come in with their own research and analysis and start coming up with their own solutions.
Yes.
Hmm. All right, next one is from ScienceAlert.com. This is the last Mars photo opportunity sent, and it's so beautiful we could cry. Maybe not me, but before its circuits ran cold in the shadow of the Martian dust storm, Opportunity took one long look at the surroundings and saved it for um, posterity. The image represents a poignant conclusion to the rover's mission, a detailed panorama combining the most recent tracks of its marathon journey with a glimpse of the sands it would never touch. Opportunity wasn't intended to run as long as it did. A mere 90 days eventually stretched to 15 solid years of rolling over the Martian sands, pumping out snapshots like a tourist who'd forgotten all about their retirement. The 360-degree image was taken from the rover's final test resting place in May last year. Over 29 days, Opportunity soaked up its surroundings in a series of 354 individual snapshots before beaming them back to NASA for piecing together. While most of them provide a colorful view of the landscape, the land, the handful of black and white blocks in the corner were taken with fading energy, denying Opportunity the time it needed to capture the last of the scene in shades of green and violet. Interesting. The final panorama embodies what made of our Opportunity rover such a remarkable mission of exploration and discovery, says John Callis from NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California. Quote, to the right of center, you can see the rim of Endeavour's crater rising in the distance. Just to the left of that, rover tracks begin their descent from over the horizon and weave their way down to the geological features that our scientists wanted to examine up close. Into the far right and left are the bottom of Perseverance Valley and the floor of the Endeavour crater, pristine and unexplored, waiting for visits from future explorers. Whoever or whatever those future explorers will be is left to be seen. No doubt, one day, a future space traveler of either human or robotic kind will rendezvous with the Age rover, and possibly even find a way to make it operational again. Until then, the picture will go down in history with famous snapshots of space exploration serving as our eyes on another world. This is although the pictures are pretty interesting. The last paragraph actually got my attention because you're saying that another robot could actually jumpstart the the old rover. That's a opportunity in itself. That's a an interesting opportunity.
Yeah, it's kind of like the new Samsung S10 powering the earbuds just by putting it on the back. You know, you just transferring the power. And to speak of this image, I think I don't know if we covered this or it was just embedded in the article or I found it out myself how it sent back Martian sound like the wind. And it just sounded like regular wind, but to know that this came from Mars and now you're seeing the terrain. Yeah, we know it's Martian terrain, but just put it in perspective how there's anywhere, well, not anywhere, but there's a number of places on Earth where you will see that same terrain. And this picture is from Mars. And for that, a rover, a human made object that we sent to another planet, sending back images itself is amazing because of the where we are in time right now. In the future, it'll sound, oh, okay, this guy's, he don't know what he's talking about. But as of right now, it's amazing.
Hmm. And that's an old, that thing was only supposed to last a few months. That thing
Mhm.
lasted 15 years. That shows that it had great engineering behind it.
Yeah, as they say, they don't make them like that anymore.
Hmm.
That was excellent engineering to say, okay, this thing, like you said, is supposed to last for 3 months, and next thing you know, you still using it 15 years later. That's insane.
Yeah, and the only reason it stopped working is because of a dust storm, not because it was faulty wiring or something like that. It probably would have kept going had it been able to hide away from the dust storm.
Yeah, that planet-wide dust storm uh, couldn't dig itself
Maybe
out.
if there was a cave, yeah, maybe if there was a cave or something like that, it could have hidden. It could have survived. Anyway, this one is from LifeScience.com. The asteroid Bennu keeps spinning faster, and scientists aren't sure why. On a distant space rock being explored by a NASA probe, days are slowly shortening, and scientists are still trying to figure out why. Right now, the asteroid known as Bennu is spinning once every 4.3 hours, but scientists working on NASA's OSIRIS-REx mission to the space rock have used data gathered the probe before the probe's arrival to calculate that Bennu's rotation rate is speeding up over time, about 1 second each century. How the hell do they know that? As it speeds up, things ought to change, and so we're going to be looking for those things and this speed up. Detecting this speed up gives us some clues as the kinds of things we should be looking for. Mike Nolan, lead author on the new research and geophysicist at Lunar and Planetary Laboratory at the University of Arizona, who is who's also head of the OSIRIS-REx mission science team, said in a statement, released by the American Geophysical Union, which published new research. We should be looking for new evidence and that something was different in fairly recent past, and it's conceivable things may be changing as we go. That's What do you think about that, Lionel?
See, I think our uh, guess on this will be equally yeah. eh, Wow. I try my best to understand space, and there's some things that will melt your mind out there. And this is not exactly mind melting, but it's spinning up faster. I don't, man, wow. And but
Hmm.
okay, I'll say this. Let's say it's like a phenomenon, not even a phenomenon. Like let's say if it's a phenomenon as to why is spinning faster, and something is sent out there to say to see why, and we find out like, well, it's spinning fast because of the radiation in the solar system is pushing it just right. Therefore, it's spinning faster, and therefore it's making it go faster. So it's like, wow, what if we can do that? At this time, we may not need um, nuclear rockets. We can harness this space radiation to propel us, just like, excuse me, excuse me, just like LaShawn Jefferson said, harness the space radiation to propel us into space. But I'm just saying, what if it is like that? We go out there and we find, well, we can actually get around because it is. That's something. Just my imagination.
Mhm. Yeah, I would have thought it was just basic velocity. It speeds up at every so many thousands of kilometers or something.
Mm. But that's
I would have thought it's as basic as that.
yeah, that's something I want to know. It's like a new scientific breakthrough. Oh, breaking news! We found this. It's like wow, because actually we're still like children in the solar system. We haven't left home. You
Hmm.
know.
Right. All right. Next one is from futurism.com. NASA. Space travel is causing astronauts' herpes to flare up. Tests
Oh
show that
goodness.
dormant herpes virus reactivate in more than half of astronauts. Why are you up there with herpes anyways? Tests show that dormant herpes, according to new NASA research, a phenomenon the space agency says could pose problems for deep space missions. During space flights, there is a rise in secretion of stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, which are known to suppress the immune system, said study author Satish Mehta, a researcher at Johnson Space Center, in a press release. In keeping with this, we find that astronauts' immune cells, particularly those that normally suppress and uh, eliminate viruses, become less effective during spaceflight and sometimes up to 60 days after. In research published last month in the journal Frontiers in Microbiology, Mehta and colleagues found that astronauts shed more herpesviruses in their urine and saliva than before or after space travel. The culprit they suspect is just the stress of spaceflight. NASA astronauts endure weeks or even months exposed to microgravity and cosmic radiation, not to mention the extreme G forces of takeoff and reentry, Method said in a press release. This physical challenge is compounded by more familiar stressors like social separation, confinement, and altered sleep wake cycle. Fortunately, symptoms were relatively rare. Out of 89 astronauts the team studied, only six experienced herpes breakout in space, according to the paper, a rate of about 7%. The viral shedding also got worse the longer the astronauts were off Earth, leading to researchers to worry the phenomenon could represent a challenge for deep space travel. While only a small proportion developed symptoms, virus reaction or reactivation rates increase with spaceflight during duration and could present a significant health risk on missions to Mars and beyond, reads the press release. I don't know, man. I would have thought that they would have figured this out a long time ago.
Yeah. Um. Okay. let me let me this is a article right here. Okay,
You
before
getting
address.
contraceptives for this?
Yeah, yeah. I'm putting my gloves right now. Before we address the elephant in the room, remember all them times I said humans will not just become automatically benevolent if we go to another celestial body in a solar system or even a universe. Once we touch down, we just won't become, oh, we've hit a change of mind. We love life. No, humans, whatever's going on Earth, we'll just carry it there. With that said, it looks like that includes herpes. So that who is you got astronauts, somebody went to space with herpes. Think about that. An astronaut went to space to the International Space Station with herpes and it spread it. Wow.
An astronaut, an astronaut trying to get an astronaut.
Man, this is you can't hey, you cannot make this up. You cannot make this up. And it spread it.
Mm.
Wow.
So now you're talking about contaminating other life beings on different planets with your nasty diseases.
You
You know,
contaminate
I mean, we talk about yeah, we talk about Dirty Dick Rodney, but here you got people running around.
contaminate other planets. My God, it's like the movies when the aliens come here and all the humans die, and because of such and
Right.
whatever the case may be, we are them. We have a potential to be them. We're going to other celestial bodies, other planets, and contaminating the planet with our nasty, dirty ways. God, you cannot make this up.
Yeah, I think it's best to send robots up there.
Yeah, man, I think I'm with you on that. You know.
Yeah.
Whew.
Well, you know, you're hearing about AIDS on Uranus or something like that.
Oh my God. Hey, herpes on Venus. Like this is
Mhm.
come on now. Whew.
People
And,
getting killed.
as a quick side note, there was a volcano that made an island in the middle of the ocean somewhere. Underground volcano that erupted, and lava made shoreline, like new shoreline, like a new island in the middle of the ocean. So scientists went there and discovered it. Like they quarantined it off because they want to see how things progress. It's a new land happened. So I guess a few months later, they were on the island and they saw a tomato tree, like tomatoes starting to grow, and they
Mm.
saying, "Wow, how did this happen? It's come out of nowhere." Come to find out, somebody took a shit, and from that, whatever that was in their system when they took a shit, a tomato started to grow.
Mm.
So that's crazy. That's wild.
All right, next one is from Detroit Free Press. Michigan could enter satellite launch business by 2022. Michigan was a let me load this up. Michigan was a major force in the early space age when Chrysler made rockets that carried astronauts and General Motors built the electric buggies they used to explore the moon. Now, a few visionaries are planning the state's return to space with ambitious proposal to build a private launch site for commercial satellites in northern Michigan. The Michigan Aerospace Manufacturers Association has been corralling investors and seeking federal permitting for the proposed spaceport, dubbed the Michigan Launch Initiative. That would do vertical launches and also handle the takeoff and landing of airplanes that drop rockets that shoot into space. This is interesting. The group has yet to pick a location for the $80 million plus launch site, which, unlike most other space projects, would be financed almost entirely by private investment. One caveat is the project's request for $2 million in state grant funds to survey potentially locations for the launch site and related command center. The site also be must be relatively remote and situated next to the Great Lakes, so rockets wouldn't fly over populated areas. The potential loss of the potential loss of state funding, albeit a sliver of initiatives' overall cost, threatens to delay or even ground the project. There recently has been a rush by several states and countries to build commercial launch sites, also known as spaceports, in hopes of capturing some of the anticipated growth in satellite launch business and even space tourism. There has been a flurry of private companies trying to build new rockets, similar to what entrepreneur Elon Musk SpaceX accomplished. Worldwide, there are about 300 satellite launches between 2016 and the end of 2018. That number is projected to grow to 400 to 500 launches over the next 3 year period, according to Houston based venture capital firm Space Fund. Quote, as far as demand goes, it is growing very rapidly, and you see a lot of investment in the launch and spaceport infrastructure side right now, said Megan Crawford, managing partner at Space Fund. Yet, growth, even with expected growth, Crawford questions whether there would be enough business to support all of the many proposed new launch sites and new rockets. Quote, my supposition is there is overinvestment at the moment, she said. There is definitely some potential there, but it is going to be a crowded marketplace. If Michigan launch site gets built, its rockets would carry small commercial satellites in a northbound direction and into a low Earth orbit, specifically a polar orbit, where objects pass from the North Pole to the South Pole. Polar orbit is different from equatorial orbits, which are better used for using launch pads nearer the Earth's equator. Satellites in polar orbit are particularly good for observing Earth and are valuable to commercial activities such as monitoring pipelines, agriculture yields, and tracking ships, said Chad Anderson, CEO of Space Angels, a New York based firm that invests in space companies. The proposed Michigan site would cost upwards of $80 million to build and be financed with the private sector investment, said Gavin Brown, executive director of the Aerospace Manufacturers Association and chief organizer of the Michigan Launch Initiative. The site could launch as many 25 rockets a year, generating an estimated $15 million in revenue per launch. The rockets could soar as early as 2022, depending on the site's Federal Aviation Administration approval as a commercial launch site. A cluster of space, rocket aerospace, and other high-tech firms could take shape near the site, Brown said. What's more, what's more, there are plans to produce biofuels for rockets on site to make it a green spaceport, Brown said. Achieving such a busy launch calendar could be tough for Michigan. Crawford, the Space Fund managing partner, said there are likely enough existing launch sites to meet demand over the next 4 to 5 years for new polar orbit satellites. But by the mid 2020s, there could possibly be room in the market for more polar orbit spaceports. There is business to gain, Crawford said, but Michigan would have to offer something better than Cape Canaveral or Vandenberg Air Force Base. Michigan spaceports would be different Then the $220 million publicly financed spaceport in New Mexico that is derived by critics as a boondoggle. Opened in 2011 to handle space tourism as well as satellite launches, the New Mexico site failed to meet initial expectations and continues to lean on the state's taxpayers to fill its budget gaps. Unlike theirs, ours is going to be privately financed and have a very specific focus. They wanted to get every they wanted to be everything to everybody. This is this is really interesting, Lino. We talk about one in every three startups is going to be a space startup, and here you have right here a new space startup coming out of good old Michigan.
Hmm. Right to the Michigan is to the northeast of me. Yeah, the whole
You'll
state.
be able to see that.
Huh?
You said you'll be able to see that.
Oh man, you know what? I mean, got to talk a little bit. I wouldn't mind going to a space launch. I hear it's beautiful. It's very highly impressive. Um,
Hmm.
but I was looking at something, and someone made the point how America is not really, 50 states is like 50 small countries that abide by the same rules or something to that effect. And you have the state of Michigan, and you have, although it's other like a smaller I want to say country company inside the state of Michigan, but it's like a is them doing this will open the door for other states to get in on it, depending on the success of this. If it's like, oh yeah, we're getting into this, and you don't hear about it anymore, but if you hear about it, if some rumble going on, you have other states that are basically need money that is going to invite and attract companies to come to their state in order to get in on this space exploration deal. This is big money.
Yeah, and there's one piece of the article I just want to read real quick. Most U.S. launch sites, most U.S. launch sites, including Cape Canaveral, Vandenberg, Wallows Flight Facility in Virginia, and the Kodiak Launch Complex in Alaska, can do polar orbit launches. There is also a dedicated polar launch site reportedly under consideration in Maine. So you're talking right in New England.
Right, right. I think Richard Branson has something in New Mexico. I want to say New Mexico. I
Yes.
think it's New Mexico.
Yeah.
And places like Maine, when you tell somebody, yeah, such and such Maine, no, if they're not from the Northeast, that is, normally they would ask, "Where is that?" Because you don't hear about these places. You don't hear about these places, and for them to get not recognition but extra income for the state, and a lot of these states don't have a don't have a large population, meaning the people there can live more comfortably because it's a small population, which means these startups can, okay, go to Maine, and you'll have a favorable conditions to be a space startup that would enrich that state, and the citizens that live there.
Mhm. I want to read this last paragraph. Distance to launch site is among challenges. One potential challenge is to launching rockets in Michigan is convincing rocket companies, none of which are nearby, to haul their vehicle components to the state, possibly all the way up to the UP. The hassles of travel could be why the newly refurbished Kodiak site in Alaska, which is theoretically ideal for polar orbit launches because it is near the North Pole, has yet to do much business. It's just hard to get your rocket up to Alaska, Crawford said. The Another possible problem for Michigan, the close proximity to Ontario and Canadian airspace, especially because the rockets would fly north. But according to Brown, the project's organizer, a Michigan launched rocket would likely hit outer space before it does Canadian space. Still, he has informed Canadian officials of the plans. We've already engaged the Canadians to have them as partners, he said. So this would be an international spaceport. Interesting.
Hmm. Now the same will go to Maine. Well, depending on where you're at in Maine, like Bangor, Maine, it's like near the border of New Hampshire, Maine. But the states that I imagine this will be beneficial to are southeast states, southeast southern states, and in America, America is more like a more instead of a melting pot, is more of a tossed salad. Where you have large populations that normally live in certain areas. Like California, you'll have a large Asian population there. Southeast America, you'll have a large um, African Black population there. So those states in Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida Panhandle, Georgia, South Carolina, Texas, North Carolina, those areas that are on the sea, the Atlantic Ocean and the Gulf of Mexico, excuse me, don't have to worry about, oh, you are close to the border to such and such. No, Alabama, Mississippi, this there are favorable conditions to launch missiles. It's not cold and rainy. It's warm a good portion of the year, and a lot of black people live down there. It's a high black population. That's like that is favorable conditions for us.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, they're talking about making $375 million off of 25 launches in a year. That's actually very lucrative when you really consider it. And then you factor in, the tourism aspect of just bringing people on site to see the site. You're gonna rake in a couple $1 million in revenue just from that alone. So this stuff can pay for itself. And what if they're talking $80 million just for the launch site itself? Um, they'll see return on investments within 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, and for investors, I would imagine the only thing you need, of course, land, a large acres and hectares of land, because there's a lot of things going on with a space flight.
Hmm.
Safety features, for the space flight, the equipment, and attract people that are trying to go out into space. Bring your stuff down here to Mississippi. Hey, ho. This is good stuff, man. Very good stuff.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. We've been talking about this since last summer. This is the new market, emerging market.
Yeah,
You'd be crazy to not jump into something like this, and black people would be crazy not to leverage this sort of emerging tech as a way to dominate in the research and manufacturing portion of it, especially Africa. I mean, Africa is a north to south continent. It's latitudinal, so it
hmm
you can launch from the north or you can launch from South Africa. There's a whole lot of untapped real estate in Africa. Two-thirds of Africa has not been developed. There's a whole lot of spaces that you can launch from.
yeah.
Yeah. All
It's
right.
out there. The
Let me get to
opportunities
this
are out
next one.
there.
Yeah. Let me get to this next one. Last one on the list is Forbes.com. Uber for planes. Startup Blackbird raises $10 million to replace road trips with flying private.
Oh, you're not sharing your screen. Yeah, there you go.
If Rudd Davis' vision comes true, the days of the road trip will be over, or at least massively curtailed. The former USA Today and Groupon executive wants to make flying private as affordable as driving and have it become the go-to option for any 50 to 500-mile trip. The biggest challenge, he says, is getting people to buy into the belief. Quote, if they think luxury air travel, if they if they think luxury air travel, they shouldn't think about us. There are no coaches on our planes, or no couches on our planes. Instead, Davis has spent the last 3 years building Blackbird, a startup that connects passengers with private planes and pilots. Passengers can join an existing flight plan and purchase open seats on the flight, or customers can charter a plane to travel from, say, San Francisco Bay Area to Lake Tahoe, and then pick a pilot from Blackbird's pre-approved list of commercially trained pilots. Blackbird has become an alternative to driving, Davis said. It's not just Davis who believes in this vision. On Tuesday, Blackbird announced that it had raised $10 million from Silicon Valley venture firm NEA. Jonathan Golden, a partner at NEA and a former Airbnb director, will join the board. Blackbird's growth reminds Golden of the early days of Airbnb and Lyft, when people had to learn a new behavior like sharing a car or sleeping in someone's house. A private driver used to be something only the elite could afford. Now hailing a ride whenever you need it is commonplace. Golden sees Blackbird repeating the same thing with private air travel. The initial reaction may be the kind of question mark, but when you really dig in, it's more perception versus reality. Golden told Forbes, it's really been demonstrated by the appetite and demand for the product. Still, whether Blackbird can amass enough demand to drive down prices remains as an existential question. Prices for flights from Oakland to Las Vegas range from $99 to join a prearranged flight to over 1,000 to $1,100 a seat for customers to charter their own. Plus, passengers may want a car when they reach the destination, meaning rental car fees could challenge just how affordable flying private really is. Then there's the challenge of getting enough airplanes and pilots onto Blackbird's network. Unlike Lyft, Uber, or Airbnb, which could rely on the fact that that a lot of people having cars or houses, most people don't own airplanes. Blackbird currently sources most of its planes by contracting through flight clubs or existing networks like Jet Suite X. Recruiting pilots could also pose a problem as Blackbird grows. The U.S. already faces a pilot shortage, and training to become a pilot isn't cheap. Regulations are another hurdle, and part of the reason is it's taken Davis 3 years to land on a business model. In 2015, the FAA grounded a few startups like Airpooler, Airpooler and FlightNow that had tried building a flight sharing model by connecting private pilots to passengers willing to pay. FlightNow even tried taking its case to the Supreme Court, but the court declined to hear it, and the company shut down. That's not a good precedent for the kind of business, for this kind of business. But Davis is confident that Blackbird has steered around any legal problems by working basically as a chartering service that connects everyday passengers with pilots and planes. Really, what it's about is keeping our prices low so people can get the opportunity to try the product and adding supply to keeping up with the ever growing demand. Davis said that the $10 million in funding will go towards doing just that. That's it's really interesting because you have to actually want to go somewhere in order for that to be feasible. most people aren't living there. You know, people, most people who are working are not like, you know what? I'm gonna go from Oakland to Las Vegas, you know, by 5:30, and I'll get with you dudes later. Like that's not really happening like that, is it?
I don't think so.
Yeah, like I don't know, man. That's
It does seem like a far fetch, but somebody's gonna do it. But will it be enough of somebody? You know, that's the question. Will it be enough for this to continue? Or will it be enough people to justify it? You know, it's a cool idea. As we saw at CES, the drone looking plane. Cool idea. It's a neat idea, and we've been hearing about Uber wants to go do. I was about to say space travel, but plane travel. Maybe this is just one of the ways people thinking about doing it. Uh, yeah, that's all I have to say about this one. This is like I said, it's a good idea for short distances. You know, you may not want to go to Oakland to Las Vegas, but Oakland to San Francisco, which is across the bay. You know, Boston to I don't know where. You know,
Maine,
wow, that's
Boston to Springfield.
yeah. That's a good
Yeah, because within state flight, right? So you're not really going over multiple states, but you're actually staying within the state itself. Because Boston to Springfield is, let me see, driving wise, that's roughly 2 hours on a good day. If you run into some traffic, that's gonna suck. So um, I could see a plane maybe taking, you know, a half of that time, right? Maybe I think a plane probably takes about 45 minutes to go from Boston
mm,
uh to Springfield. I think it's like 45 minutes between yeah, that sounds about right. 45 minutes between Worcester and Springfield. Yeah, that's what I mean, Worcester. So
because Springfield is north of Boston, right?
no, Springfield is west of Boston. So
Okay,
Springfield is closer to New York.
okay. Because I drove through there. I didn't. I mean, I spent like maybe 10 minutes. That was just on the driveway through.
Yeah, you are 90 then.
Yeah. I just remember it was a
Yeah,
hot summer day.
90. Yeah, 90 west is Springfield. So 84 goes from Connecticut to Springfield, and then 90 goes from Springfield to Boston. So that's what you were on. But
Okay.
for something like Springfield, yeah, that makes sense. But to go from Boston to New York on a small little plane like that, I don't. It's just not feasible. I can get on a charter flight from Logan Airport in Boston to New York for $99. I don't see the value in that.
Now now. I don't think this would be feasible. I know Casey Neistat. He when he got to go to the airport, he'll take a helicopter to the airport from somewhere. But
Hmm.
I, maybe that'd be pushing it. You know, you doing if you need to go to the airport because airport traffic is horrible. Just I don't care where. Like international airport traffic is horrible. So maybe you can do that. Like I said, this is a stretch. I like the idea. Maybe it's too early. It's too soon. I don't know. Or maybe what how they're doing it is not feasible, but it's still a good idea.
See, in places like Africa, that makes a lot of sense, right? To go from Cape Town to Botswana, that might be feasible,
Hmm.
right? If you need it, if you had like I have to do it right now, an urgency, that makes a lot of sense. To hail down a pilot and say, "Yo, here's $100. Let's go to Botswana." That makes a lot of sense. But in America, you have so many different forms of transit. It's hard to justify a model like that.
Yeah.
And I only say that because Africa doesn't have all of that sort of transit infrastructure in place. Like we just saw Ethiopian plane go down in flames, the 737, and then all other planes have to be grounded too. So therefore, the very rapid transit that they have, which is airplanes, has now been grounded, and everybody's stuck at one terminal or one location. They can't get out, right? So now you would something like that does come in handy, right? A ride hailing service for pilots that does come in handy in a place like Africa where there's very little um, rapid transit infrastructure in place.
Hmm. Yeah, that's more feasible.
And maybe what was that?
Like big areas like in Africa, you know. But like you said, there's so many ways to transport here. It'll be hard to get it off the ground.
It won't be feasible, right? So you'll have like, I mean, you can go on like cheap air tickets or cheaptickets.com, and you can, I mean, if you're willing to deal with the BS,
Hmm.
you can get a cheap seat for like $53 or something like that, or you can take a Peter Pan bus or one of those China buses for $10 from Boston to New York. ten
Hmm.
dollars can get you can get you from one state to the other. That's hard to justify a plane that's so risky because it goes up, yeah, but does it come down the same exact way that it came off the ground though?
Yeah,
That becomes the question because all these little small planes are subject to inclement weather. So any
yeah,
sort of yeah, any sort of wind turbulence or something like that can toss a little plane like that upside down, and that's when you know that that $99 really wasn't worth it.
yeah. That $99 was your life. That's it. A good gust of wind.
Yeah, yeah, especially
Yeah.
if you don't. I mean, it's not like oh well, if when you take this when you get with this pilot, he has Netflix waiting for you or Hulu waiting for you, and you can watch a flick while you on your flight. That's It's not like that.
Yeah.
They would have to
Well,
get bigger planes. They would have to get significantly better planes.
if we don't hear nothing too much about this, then we know what happened. But if we do, we'll we'll be interested to see like how they're doing it. You know how they pulled it off. You know,
Mhm.
it's amazing.
Mhm.
Yeah, but I'm with you. I don't know how successful this will be. This is a stretch.
Sure is. You have anything else you want to say before you close out?
Thanks for tuning
Anything
in.
else? That we
Hmm?
go ahead. No, go right ahead.
I said thanks for tuning in. This has been a really nice, smooth show. Um, then the herpes thing is hilarious. I'm gonna be thinking about that for the rest of the day. But other than that, nah, I ain't got nothing else.
Cool. Because anybody who's looking for IT mentorship, listening to this, we will be providing some IT mentorship. At least I will. So if you want IT mentorship, you can actually contact me through the Brain Trust email, and I will provide you with a time and schedule for us to actually coordinate on that. So with that being said, thank you all for joining us, and have a good night.